Hello, I'm Glenda Greenwald, CEO and founder of the Aspen Brain Institute. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our growing community of 21st century global seekers, seeking to be educated and delighted at the cutting edge. And here we are at the cutting edge. We are proud to announce Aspen Brain Institute's first Brain Healthy Cooking Series. It is a 5-part holiday gift to our global brain health community. This special virtual series will serve as a curated brain healthy cooking guide for lovers of delicious food, and also to people who say it as a priority, their own and their family's brain health, just in time for Thanksgiving and the holidays. So now each session will be led by our guest host, Dr. Annie Fenn, founder of the Brain Health Kitchen, and will feature demonstrations from guest chefs and renowned brain health scientists. Registrants will be provided prior to each session with all of our recipes. Now you might ask, why would the Aspen Brain Institute be sponsoring a brain healthy cooking series? Well, it is because that diet and food choices are by far the strongest variable that we have control over for matching our healthy brain span to our lifespan. So since eating and cooking the brain healthy way is always a good idea, we will showcase Dr. Annie Fenn and 5 other star chefs and scientists. Now, details of the coming series will be on our website, aspenbraininstitute.org. You can see all the details there and can register there. We'd like to thank Lugano Diamonds for their generous support as our national underwriter. And we also thank Lugano Diamonds for choosing Aspen Brain Institute as a nonprofit worthy of their support and their values, and also for making our new cooking series free to the public and able to be viewed worldwide. We'd also like to thank Purist Magazine and the Purist Online, which are our media sponsors. Our audiences, both Purist Magazine and Aspen Brain Institutes, we share the same values and themes and focus on brain health and health in general and well-being. We are aligned in a beautiful way, and I look forward to engaging our mutual global audiences together. It is now my honor and privilege to bring you these new episodes, and let's see what we can learn and explore together. So at this moment, I'd like to introduce Aspen Brain Institute's guest host and chef, Dr. Annie Fenn. Dr. and Chef Annie Fenn is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist who practiced medicine for more than 20 years. When she realized that helping people change what they eat was just as powerful as an intervention as prescribing pills and doing procedures. So she quickly traded her stethoscope for an apron and went to culinary school. Now, then Dr. Annie founded the Brain Health Kitchen Cooking School in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is the only school focused specifically on resisting Alzheimer's and other dementias. Students learn which foods are neuroprotective, which accelerate cognitive decline, and how to prepare foods using brain-friendly cooking techniques. And now we will have all that knowledge as well. So Annie, Dr. Annie, and take it away, Dr. Annie and Dr. Drew, please take it away and let's get cooking.
Thank you, Glenda, for having me. And welcome everyone to the Brain Health Kitchen. I am thrilled to introduce you to our first guest, Dr. Drew Ramsey. Drew is unique in so many ways, as you will see. As a practicing psychiatrist, Drew learned early on the impact that what we eat has on our mental health. That's what led him to focus on what he calls nutritional psychiatry, where he helps people overcome their mental health challenges, not just with medication and talk therapy, but by boosting their nutrition as well. As you might suspect, Drew is also an enthusiastic food lover and the author of 4 books, including the upcoming Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. So today, Drew and I are going to talk about fish and seafood and what it can do for your brain. We'll be cooking up a few brain-friendly holiday dishes, and we will be entertaining some questions from you, Glenda, at the end. Drew, are you there?
I'm here, Annie. I'm really excited. I've never ever beamed out of my kitchen, oddly enough, and so I'm here, and I'm excited, but I'm a little nervous. I want all my dishes to work out, even though this is virtual.
That's okay. This is just like you and me cooking side by side in the Brain Health Kitchen cooking school.
Well, that was the very last thing I did before quarantine and before the pandemic. Was you and I had such a wonderful night cooking together with a small group, all learning about brain health and food. And that was one of the most organized and wonderful cooking classes I've ever been a part of. So I'm excited for this one with you, and really excited to share some of these recipes. And I'm so thankful to the Aspen Brain Institute for having me on to talk about nutritional psychiatry and just talk about ways that, especially as we're heading into this winter, that we all can kind of double down on our efforts to protect our brain with the foods that we choose to eat. So I'm thrilled to make some good stuff.
Fantastic. So I know you you love to represent fish and seafood as a brain healthy food group. And you have some dishes using fish and seafood, correct?
Yeah, so we talked about one dish, which is I love helping people use wild salmon. And a lot of times with fish and seafood, people get worried about cost. And especially now during the pandemic, there's been such a kind of rebirth in some ways of canned food and foods that have a long shelf life. So I want to use some canned wild salmon, and we're going to make some soy salmon burgers, wild salmon burgers. We're going to do a little mini version over some leafy greens. And it's actually the first time we're ever getting to share a recipe from my new book, Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. And then I have a little special dish, gnocchi alla Glenda, which is a sardine pasta that gnocchi that Glenda requested. So those are my dishes.
So many people don't really know what to do with canned seafood. I have all sorts of cans of seafood in my kitchen, and I think that they're just such an easy and inexpensive way to add not only like flavor bombs into your food, but also like a huge dose of omega-3s. Can you talk about why you recommend people to eat seafood in general for their mental health?
Yeah, so seafood in general is great for those reasons, long-chain omega-3 fats specifically. So this is DHA, which is a main structural fat of your brain. About, say, 7-8% of the dry weight of your brain is DHA. And EPA, which I also think is more of a functional fat. It's kind of a big anti-inflammatory fat. And so these are 2 molecules that have really, throughout the kind of revolution in nutrition and in mental health that we're seeing, they've been a big focus. And one of the things that kind of has been a focus is fish oil and fish oil pills. And I kind of feel like the proof is in the seafood, that really working to incorporate that into your diet is a great move in terms of protecting yourself from dementia and depression and anxiety, probably, at least based on the data we have now. And so, and I think as a seafood, it's a category of food category that kind of is challenging for us.
Absolutely. I know the dementia literature shows that if you eat at least one high quality fish or seafood meal a week, you can reduce your risk of dementia by as much as 60 to 70%.
I mean, it's incredible data like that, right? I mean, there's a study about postpartum depression, really concerning time for a new mother to get depressed. And I think there's something like a 8 times decreased risk when you have more seafood in the diet in the 9 months prior to pregnancy. And so, and I think a lot of times people, start to parse that data and look at it. How strong is it? And I always think it's pretty consistent. We know the human brain evolved on a coastline. And in addition to those omega-3 fats, this is where, especially in the bivalves, mussels, clams, and oysters, you're going to find lots of B12, but also in salmon. That B12 and DHA are really the two nutrients that are most correlated to the rate of brain shrinkage as you age. And so what I like about seafood is you're getting both of those. You're also getting a complete protein. You know, we're always wondering, like, where do we get our protein? I was getting that question, like, what type of protein powder do I use? And like, just, you know, use wild salmon. That's the, that's the best protein source. And so it's just a really great food category. Iodine for the thyroid, selenium for the thyroid, you know, just lots and lots of what we call nutrient density. You just get more nutrients per calorie from foods like wild salmon or sardines or anchovies. And they're one that, you know, I think people are intimidated by making seafood at home, but and I'm here in Indiana. I'm a farm boy. I did not know how to make seafood or enjoy it. And that's really shifted. Just takes a little practice and some tips we'll teach you tonight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's so fascinating how the same nutrients and omega-3s that help with your mental health also help fend off dementia. So,
yeah, I mean, there's that correlation, right? That we know having an untreated depression vastly increases your risk of dementia. Some studies say doubles your risk. And so, you know, I think that's where really the food and brain food movement is really appealing to people, that, you know, when you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s and you're worried about this, like, what can you do? You know, Sudoku, it's like, all right, that's great. But like, you know, you're also already eating. And that's, I think, the main point about nutritional psychiatry and about brain food that sometimes people miss is this is already something you're doing every single day. And so little changes in that behavior, 2 or 3 seafood meals a week, for example, getting more plants in your diet, it just has a massive impact in your risk of both of these illnesses.
Absolutely. So before you show us what you're making, I have one more question. What do you say to people that don't eat seafood? Can they get the same long chain fatty acids through supplements?
I say, come on over. Let's have a little, I mean, this is part of being a psychiatrist interested in food, is you're always curious why people don't like things and what happened to them. And sometimes it's strong flavors. A lot of times it's bad experiences or inexperience. So you can get those long-chain omega-3 fats in things like fish oil. I look for a fish oil that's just squeezed fish. I generally recommend a liquid form, but I kind of always challenge people a little bit. Just, you know, because as you'll see with this dish, there's a kind of reputation fish has is kind of stinking up your kitchen or being smelly, of being really powerful in terms of flavor, you know, strong flavor, strong odor. And I don't really think that's the reality of fish when you spend a little time and learn some ways to make it. So that's what I say to people who don't like fish. But I also say, hey, fish oil. And you can also, if you don't want to be involved with, you know, for example, folks who are following a vegan lifestyle, they can get DHA from a vegan algal supplement is another way.
Exactly. Because that's how the fish get their DHA, right?
That's how I like the fish to do their work. My work for me, collecting the DHA, but some people like to go right to the algae, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm going to, after you show us what you're making, I'm going to put the finishing touches on a really easy apple tahini tart. It's very brain healthy. This tart fills in a lot of the other category of omega-3s, the ALAs, the non-DHA EPA, which are just really good anti-inflammatory foods, and we should have in our diets all the time. So this is basically a tart with a tahini cashew cream, and it's basically sugar-free, it's dairy-free, so it's bound to please all sorts of eaters at your Thanksgiving table. And we'll come back to that, and I'll show you how I finish it in just a minute.
It's a strange camera angle, sorry, but I want to show everybody kind of what I'm doing here.
I like it.
All right, so welcome again to my kitchen. And so what I've done here is just done a mise en place of these wild salmon burgers, and we'll be able to share the recipe from Eat to Beat Depression. We did 2 ways. We did a diddly wild salmon burger, and then we did a soy wild salmon burger. And so first step is get some wild salmon. You know, just find a jar. There's lots of different brands, and look for a wild caught symbol. And this is a 14, almost 15 ounce jar. And so I have a couple of eggs that I whisk up here. There's a couple of farm eggs from our chickens. If you want to meet my chickens, they're on Instagram. And then a little bit of panko or breadcrumbs, or because of the pandemic, I didn't have panko. So I just put a couple of gluten-free crackers in here. So that's the salmon, the egg, and then a little bit of breadcrumb as a binder. And then to that, I'm going to add a few things. I'm going to add a chopped green onion. I'm going to add some chopped up garlic right here. Some chopped up, this is supposed to be cilantro, but I don't have cilantro. And as you can see, I like to swap things out as a chef. And so this is actually one horseradish leaf and a little bit of basil, but just to kind of get some leafy greens in there. And then the juice of a lime. And so I put some of this in earlier, but I'm just sort of juicing in a lime. It's got a teaspoon of ground ginger, and then a couple of tablespoons of, that can be soy sauce, or I used a little Bragg's amino acid. And then.
So many of are actually anti-inflammatory foods in their own right.
Yeah, so, the idea in all of kind of nutritional psychiatry, and as well as just, kind of eating for brain health, is just really trying to load you up with these, anti-inflammatory foods. That's why we're seeing a lot of seafood, a lot of leafy greens, why I'm trying to work in those herbs and spices. And so while I'm mixing this up, I'm also going to heat up a little bit of, olive oil in my pan. Sort of a medium heat, and you can use olive oil. I'm using a little avocado oil, both because I've run out of olive oil because I eat so much of it, but also I'm looking for a little bit of a higher smoke point.
I love avocado oil because it has a neutral flavor and a higher smoke point. So it's perfect for a lot of dishes.
So this is where, again, it doesn't smell fishy. And I think is one of the take-home points, I think, for everybody. And that, when you take that wild salmon out of the can first, it looks a little, I don't know, feels like we used to open the cans of cat food, right? So I think you have to kind of get over that leap. People worry, it's really one of the freshest ways to get the salmon. And so now I'm just going to pat these into little burgers. And I've got my olive oil, my avocado oil heating up here. And I've been thinking about how to do this as a nice holiday dish. And the idea, I think, was to have a little appetizer. Usually we can do this as a burger. And for a lot of our burgers in our house now, we're just almost kind of like a crab cake. So I'm just sort of making these and setting them on a side of greens. So I'll make a few of these sort of small little, almost like a seafood croquette. And then once my avocado oil is nice and heated, I'll drop these in. So again, really simple recipe, right? This is like as easy as it gets.
Yeah, it's easy to put that together. Like it looks like they're not going to fall apart.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the breadcrumbs. Again, there's a couple eggs in here, and then the salmon. I find it kind of just, it makes a nice kind of pasty mix that allows you to. And so I'll take these guys right here and just drop them in the pan. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, Annie, as a chef, but just to kind of pat them down a little bit.
Drew, what are your thoughts on wild versus farm seafood?
So I'm a big fan of the wild seafood for a number of reasons. One, you just get better nutrients and more of the good stuff, usually in wild seafood. Mother Nature's done a good job of making seafood for a long time. And so usually farm seafood, they're feeding the farmed fish soy and corn and kind of other commodity grains. And so it kind of, if you're getting omega-3s, it's just because they're adding in fish meal to that. And I like my food dollars going to supporting the ocean and folks who are really trying to keep those ecosystems going. I mean, wild salmon is just such a blessing for our brains and for the planet. And so my feeling is really always go wild. It's one of the reasons you won't find me like eating salmon a lot out unless it's labeled wild salmon. And also it's one of those reasons it's great to use canned salmon. So
totally agree.
So these are perking along here. And then I wanted to make just another really, really easy, fun dish and great way to, I know we said we just do one dish, but I've got a little garlic that I've just been sauteing in the background here. And I'm just sauteing maybe two or three cloves. It depends how much you like garlic. We used a little bit of salt. And I want to make a real quick sardine pasta. And this is a really simple one. It's just garlic, olive oil. I like to put a little pine nuts in there. You know, nuts in general are great. They're full of the same same fats and olive oil, oleic acid. And so I kind of just get the olive oil and the garlic kind of toasting in there together. I like to use a little lemon zest as well. So I'll kind of put about half in now, and I'll wait a little bit. These salmon burgers or little croquettes are starting to kind of brown up. Sorry if I was a little fast there. So
those look great.
I'll start to, and so I'm just using again a cast iron skillet here. So they don't stick in the pan.
And then you're adding sardines to your pasta?
Yep. So these are the salmon burgers again, and you can put these. I really like these with like a little coleslaw, or I love dipping sauces. Just again, not to hide the flavors, but just as a nice way to make it a really nice palatable dish for everyone. Okay, and so
that's so easy.
What's that?
I've never made salmon burgers. That looks so easy.
It's so easy. It's so easy. All right, so we were gonna make an anchovy gnocchi, but then, because I'm not a huge sardine fan, but then Glenda told me she's not a huge anchovy fan. So I'm gonna go outside my comfort zone, and just because again, canned fish, really easy, right? You're looking for a quick meal. You're looking for a great source of protein. You're looking for all these things that we know healthy brains need. And so here are some sardines, right? And again, it's not a strong fishy taste. People, and again, I grew up on a farm. I'm not like a huge seafood lover. So I've got my garlic and my lemon zest and my pine nuts going here. A nice little simmer. I'm gonna turn that heat down now to a low. I'm gonna have drained the sardines and get them in there.
And are you dumping everything like what the sardines are marinated into the pan as well?
Yeah, these sardines came in, great question. These sardines came in a little bit of water, and I drained off that water. And so again, the main point being, not like a big fishy smell in my kitchen right now. So these salmon burgers are about 4 minutes of, salmon burger down. These salmon burgers are about 4 minutes aside.
Nice.
So they're looking nice there. I'm gonna pull those off, put them on a paper towel and let them rest. This one doesn't feel quite done. The way I'm checking the doneness is I'm just giving a little poke. And then this the sardine pasta, gnocchi alla Glenda, as we're calling it, right? So now it's got I'm using the lemon zest. Citrus zest is full of these really interesting phytonutrients that bind to your opioid receptor. So, and I'm in need of that on a Thursday night. I got to be honest, it's been a rough week. So, I don't need to make light of that. But this is so we got sardines, pine nuts, garlic, And then I'm gonna add just a little touch of a red sauce, just to kind of here, mix it around a little bit.
No, that's a Sicilian thing. The sardines, the lemon, the red sauce.
Right here, I've got a little bit of gnocchi that I cooked up earlier, just in preparation. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of it.
All my favorite foods.
And just mix that right into my pan. And one of the things sometimes I'll do is I'll saute some greens in here. But this is what this dish looks like.
Maybe spinach.
When it's all done.
That'd be so nice with arugula.
A little arugula. So right here is kind of what we look like. That's our gnocchi a la sardine. You saw how quickly that dish went together. I really didn't start it until the video started. And then if we do a good job and we make a pretty little fish cake, it's going to come out looking a little something like this. And the sauce here is just a little horseradish sauce. You can do a wasabi mayo, you can do a chipotle mayo, all kinds of spicy mayos. And I just put it on a little bit of greens instead of a bun. And yeah, cheers everybody. I hope some little tiny salmon, wild salmon burgers and some gnocchi a la Sardi or a la Glenda, I think as we should call it, come into your kitchen this holiday. And it's been fun sharing. I've never cooked for anyone, Annie. I don't know how you make me, thank you for asking me to do this.
I'm getting really hungry now and it's the middle of the day here.
Mm.
Oh, I'm gonna make that tonight. So
it's so easy and it's really good.
I'm gonna bring Glenda in for questions in a minute. And while I think her questions are mostly for you, and I'll be wrapping up my tart while we're doing that. And before we leave, I'll show you all how I did that. So Glenda, are you ready to ask Dr. Drew some questions?
Here we are. Wow, thank you guys. That was Drew, both of you, but Drew, that was really, really special. I had one question about the gnocchi because it's so personal. Did you cook the gnocchi or are they come ready made?
You know, the gnocchi need to be cooked for a few minutes, but I like the gnocchi for a number of reasons. You can get a gluten-free gnocchi. It's a potato starch, and you know, potatoes have a bad rap. Potatoes are full of potassium. They're really great starch for the microbiome, which we know lots of the experts here, you know, talking at the Aspen Brain Institute are talking about the microbiome these days. And it just allows me to mix it up a little bit. I also find it's kind of, how do I put it? With other pastas, Glenda, I tend to like scarf them down. And with gnocchi, I kind of eat it a little more slowly. And so, but the gnocchi just take a few minutes. Again, really quick meal. And they just take a few minutes
did you make the gnocchi or buy them?
I bought them.
So because we live in Aspen's a kind of small town, and we don't have a lot of those things.
You've got gnocchi. I mean, if I have gnocchi here in my grocery store in rural Indiana, I guarantee you have gnocchi. It's in the pasta section. Usually they've got a spinach, a plain, a whole wheat. They come in it's a little like freeze dried or not. It's a little sealed packet like this.
Oh, okay. I'll find them.
You'll find it, and it's just, you know, I think it's a really fun way just to mix up when you're wanting pasta. I mean, I'm a fan of pasta, but gnocchi is just it's a nice dish to do.
I thought everything you put in, all of it's just fantastic because there are very few cooks and series that have brain healthy cooking. And what would you say, Drew, is the most factor that we have control over to help us chart our brain's destiny? You've sort of said it already, but I'd just like you to tell us again.
Well, I'm happy to say it again. I'm happy to always say it, that I really think it's our lifestyle choices that make a difference. And that's going to be food, exercise, sleep, mindfulness, and love are kind of the pieces I think that all that stuff's great for your brain. Does it 100% mean you're going to beat dementia or beat depression or beat anxiety? No, there are a lot of factors we all know that go into this. And I think sometimes people worry we're saying, oh, just, eat food, you'll be fine. You'll never get these illnesses. It's more that we really, if you have these illnesses in your family, what can you do to prevent them? And if you get a diagnosis of one of these illnesses, what can you do to improve your outcome, improve your quality of life? And I just think food is such a wonderful piece of that, both in the evidence, but also experientially. If I'm a person who has depression and I go into therapy, that's great. I do a lot of therapy. It's wonderful, good, personal, hard work. It takes a little while. It's tough and it's expensive. Or medications, really helpful for a lot of people. They take a month. Whereas you're eating today, 3 meals, hopefully, and some snacks. And in those kind of levers that we can pull to influence how we feel, food is just a huge piece of it. And so that's where in nutritional psychiatry, we emphasize these food categories: leafy greens, seafood, rainbows, nuts and beans, to really try and give people a lot of choices and move away from this kind of fear-based, like, don't eat this, don't eat that, be scared of this stuff, and really, like, there's a set of foods that really are filled with nutrition for the brain, and those are the ones we want you eating.
I'm going to finish off my tart. You are making me really hungry.
I am so sorry. But Drew, but you're saying that certain foods are either brain foods or superfoods for the brain. And I wanted to ask what your feeling is about olive oil, although I can tell already from, I know the way Annie cooks, and I know from watching you just a few minutes that you probably think that olive oil is a great superfood for the brain, but let me hear you tell it if it's true.
I like olive oil, and I'm a fan of it for a number of reasons. One, I'm a fan of foods that we don't have to argue about with some fraction of the nutritional world. I mean, it feels like people are so confused these days because we spend a lot of time in some ways arguing, and olive oil we all tend to agree on. It's great. It's great for a number of reasons. It's an anti-inflammatory fat. It's great because it comes with a lot of antioxidants. I also like it because it helps with the absorption. When you add olive oil into vegetables, you help with the absorption of, Gus, good Lord.
We've all got it, apparently. And
sorry.
Annie, you have bears, so that was my little bear. Compared to her
so the olive oil I'm a fan of. The antioxidants, its ability to help absorb fat-soluble nutrients like vitamin D, K, and A, and E from food. Then it also helps us absorb those fat-soluble phytonutrients like lycopene. So the fact that I put in lots of olive oil into the garlic and that tomato sauce, you're going to pull out more of the lycopene and absorb more. So those are all the reasons that I like olive oil. It's one of the power players. We created a set of power players for brain health in Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety, and olive oil made the list, and so did wild salmon. So,
well, I really never understood that certain fats would, how do you say it, would absorb more?
Yeah, they increase the absorption. So if you think we have molecules in the body that dissolve in water, like vitamin C, and then we have molecules in our body that dissolve in fat. They sit in our fatty membranes. And if you think about it from a brain health perspective, part of that brain health game for us is over time protecting our brain fat. And brain fat is very susceptible to oxidation. Oh. And so kind of in a farm boy way, it just makes common sense to me. All right, if we want to protect fat, we need more fat soluble nutrients. Those are things like vitamin E. We know is very, very tied to depression risk, to dementia risk. Things like vitamin D, fat soluble nutrient. Lots of vitamin D in the salmon, by the way. So in those types of nutrients, and then the fat soluble phytonutrients, these are molecules in plants like lycopene that you're going to absorb more of them if there's fat to kind of have them dissolve in.
Right.
When you look at traditional foods as well, such as the Mediterranean diet, which has been proven in so many studies to help with longevity and brain health, olive oil is thought to be the secret sauce of the Mediterranean diet. It's not just the whole grains and the fruits and the vegetables and the fish and the seafood in the Mediterranean diet, but it's the fact that it's often paired with olive oil. And also olive oil is often poured over the food before it's eaten. Mm-hmm. It helps absorb those phytonutrients.
That's a really good point. And on this business of things that people have to argue about, it's only recently that they said we don't have to fear fat. We actually need the good fats. So we need to talk about that. And when go ahead. Go ahead, Annie. If you were you speaking?
Bad fats. There's a good distinction now between healthy fats and fats that are not good for you. So I like to think of fats in terms of the brain-friendly fats.
So tell us what they are.
These are the polyunsaturated fats. These are adding more nuts and seeds and olive and avocado oil to your diet, and less saturated fats from, say, animal products or man-made fats.
Yeah, and I think the man-made is particularly one where if we think about what shifted, we've been really focused on saturated fat in the health world and cholesterol in some ways, but really what shifted is we began eating a lot of vegetable oils. We began eating a lot of omega-6 fat vegetable oils. We began eating a lot of trans fats and began eating a lot of processed food. At the same time, as a society, we started eating a lot of simple carbohydrates and simple sugars. And so this just leads to a kind of condition where you're just eating a lot of inflammatory stuff. And so the idea is to kind of jigger our thinking and get away from this, fats are bad, and think more of, let's really focus on there are really high quality fats. The other thing that fats do is they make us full. And Glenda, I know that's important for me. My brain doesn't work when I'm hungry. It just doesn't. It shuts off. I'm grumpy. I'm irritable. I can't solve math problems. I'm not a good person. And so I like fat because if I just eat a bunch of broccoli, I don't stay very full. If I eat some broccoli with a lot of olive oil on there, really much more satiating meal. And that's, our body, so many people are struggling with hunger. Our body responds to protein, to fiber, right, by expanding the stomach, and to fat is the main markers of satiation. So that's the other reason I think it's just a great, it's a great way to help people.
That reminds me, what about grass-fed butter? Grass-fed meaning coming from?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of regenerative agriculture, which is a notion that, let's expand our kind of concept of thinking about meat and beef and lamb from just thinking about kind of factory farm meats, which are very efficient and lower cost in some ways, and so provide a very low cost protein, but don't really have the same fatty acid makeup, they just don't, as grass-fed animals. And they also have a very different environmental impact. When I'm out here, I'm looking at my front field. All of our neighbors have a couple of cattle. It's there's a difference between beef that comes from a feedlot and beef that comes from a pasture. Both from a nutritional standpoint and from an environmental impact. And so grass-fed products, grass-fed butter, grass-fed dairy, grass-fed beef, in part of supporting small farms, I do support those products. I think that a lot of the science we have about meat and dairy really don't get into in some ways, nuance or the presentation of what a brain healthy diet looks like with a little bit of grass-fed beef in there or with some grass-fed butter. It's again, one of those things that I put a little grass-fed butter in that gnocchi, right? Just to kind of.
It's not taboo. This whole thing about when we're eating the good foods and the good fats and the good, I guess, pastured beef and eggs, it's okay. We don't have to.
Well, Glenda, I think that you're seeing one of those kind of bright lines in the science where there's definitely a group of researchers, scientists, dementia experts who argue that no, like you should not eat the saturated fats, you should not eat the cholesterol. I think some of us, and I'm certainly in that camp, I really think that there's a limitation of the data we've had so far, and also a way that these products do fit into a healthy food cycle and a healthy farm cycle. I mean, as I like to point out, what do the vegetables grow in? They grow in animal poop. And so, if you're eating organic kale and talking about how you hate dairy, you haven't been to the big kale farms where most of the soil comes from manure from dairy farms. And so it's where I've, at least in my own kind of education, tried to step back a little bit and think about what's the food system I want to be involved in, what's the one that makes sense to me. I'm here on a small farm, and it's where those products I do think fit in. Not that people should go out to McDonald's and fast food and eat burgers, but that's that's different than the grass-fed burger that you make at home from a small farm or a grass-fed meatball. So
we just don't all have that privilege. Now, Drew, just to change a little bit, you became something of a men's health specialist because you're on the cover of some magazines or something. So how did that happen? And is there something different about men's brain health than women's, and men's brain health and food?
It's a great question. So I've been really privileged to work on the advisory board of Men's Health Magazine and to be speaking about men's health really for most of the pandemic in our Friday Sessions series, which is a live interview with usually a notable man, a musician, an athlete, a celebrity about their mental health. Right. I do think mental health in men and women is a little different. I mean, one thing that's similar is that there's a lot of stigma in talking about mental health, and that's really shifting. But men in particular, the way that we conceive of our mental health, the kind of cues we get from society about our mental health, it's really, it's very different. There's both the stigma that, we're all gonna like have midlife crises and we don't know how to talk about our feelings. and then I think there's just the reality that men, we kind of process some emotions a little differently. And so I'm concerned about male mental health for a number of reasons, Linda. 75% of suicides in America are completed by men. And we also know that men don't seek out treatment. About 80% of men who have mental health conditions don't find treatment or seek treatment. And so I think speaking up more about this is really important, especially right now during the pandemic where men and women are suffering. But, it feels that when men begin to crack in their mental health, they don't reach out as much, they shut down more, they isolate more, we know they drink more. The lifetime prevalence of a man having a substance use disorder is 50%. So 50% of men end up struggling with substance. And I think that's probably because that's how men tend to treat our depression, right? We drink. And so it feels like that's really shifting though. There've been a number of just, Kevin Love, Michael Phelps, Carson Daly, just a number of notable men who've stepped up. We've interviewed on our series, GZ, G. Urbo, Alan Houston, just a number of notable men, really diverse group of men who talk frankly about their mental health. And so I appreciate the question, Glenda, because
how could we tune into, is that your program?
It's every Friday at 1:30 Eastern time on the Men's Health Instagram page. Or you could just put in hashtag Friday Sessions, hopefully, and we'll come up. And there've been, gosh, we've probably done 15, 20 episodes so far. And so, it's really, I think what's helpful is to hear men who have had a lot of success or have struggled at points in their life and their career talk about what they experienced, how they got through, and to normalize it. I mean, a lot of the take-home messages for me have been really how men need to have a kind of discipline around our mental health and our routine that we don't. And also the real power of kind of work and productivity and routine in men's lives. But it's been a real eye-opener for me just to, and I guess a real pleasure as a psychiatrist to see in the conversation really opening up. Even, events like this, we're talking about food and brain health and dementia and depression all at once. It's just, we weren't doing this 2 or 3 years ago. And so I'm really hopeful for male mental health and mental health in general. And I'm really grateful for everything that you're doing at the Aspen Brain Institute to promote the conversation and include food.
And for you opening up this, we'll grab you for that kind of a session to hear more, broaden that audience that I'm sure could, more men and women want to hear about. Drew, I believe you're the founder of the Brain Food Clinic in New York. So I'd just like to know what goes on there. What kind of work do you do there?
Yeah, sure. So the Brain Food Clinic really starts with an idea that we want to include food in mental health treatments. And we want to do this for a variety of reasons. One, we want to do it based on the data, that the research increasingly shows that a Mediterranean style diet and your dietary pattern directly correlate with your risk of depression. So we know when people have depression, we want to get them better and then prevent relapse. And so food is one of the tools we want to employ. There was a study called the SMILES trial that looked at a group of individuals with depression, gave them a Mediterranean style diet with 7 coaching and dietary counseling sessions. And about 32% of the people who received this dietary intervention went into full remission of their depression. And so based on data like that, we want to incorporate how we evaluate an individual with mental health concerns. We just want to incorporate a food evaluation. So everyone who comes to the Brain Food Clinic, we talk to you about your food and your lifestyle choices, not in a judgmental way, like you got to eat vegan or keto, but much more in this way that we're calling nutritional psychiatry, which is it's our job as clinicians to help you nourish yourself. And there's been such conflicting and confusing messaging about that there are lots of ways to feed your brain. You can have a really brain healthy diet, eating Mediterranean or keto or vegan, or you can go about those diets in ways that really aren't good for the brain. And so what we do in our clinic, our team, when we evaluate patients, we talk to them specifically about food. We do our nutritional psychiatry food assessment. And then we try and just layer in, some people see us specifically for food and food changes. A lot of patients come to see us because they're looking for a more holistic mental health treatment. And we incorporate and layer our food interventions along with psychotherapy and sometimes medication or supplement management. And we really focus on helping people work these food categories. So this would be a good example of, for example, we spoke earlier and you said you didn't like anchovies. So I swapped it out. I made sardine pasta this time, but I'd be curious if you were my patient, why not? You said the salt. I was like, well, what about a white anchovy with a little less salt, where kind of working with you to expand your options, expand the diversity of foods that you're eating, does a number of things for us. One, more plants means more good fuel for our microbiome, all those bugs in our gut that we know are associated with brain health. But also more diversity means we don't get bored, right? That we're not just kind of eating the same thing over and over again. And so those are some of the things. I've got a wonderful chef and therapist, Samantha Elcreef, who really came into my practice maybe 3 or 4 years ago and just really helped kind of bump up the amount of food help we can offer people. And then we have another psychiatrist, Xiao Jie Hu, who really is expert in helping people in a holistic way. And so that's what we do in the Brain Food Clinic. We do that, and then we try and just produce helpful content to people around how to incorporate nutritional psychiatry into your life.
Well, as you say that, and Drew, and thank you for that. It sounds like outstanding work. But do you find that people who are depressed have poor eating diets, poor eating that's something a little bit about what's going on?
For some people, it's a big part about what's going on. For people who have gut concerns and IBS, some studies have shown that rates of anxiety in that population are over 70%. When you get the IBS under control, rates of anxiety drop down in that population to maybe 20%. And so we find that also anybody who's been depressed is watching, when you're feeling down, like you don't feel like making seafood, you feel like eating mac and cheese. And so I think that part of our getting involved with, it feeds on itself, right? That we know that we make those bad food choices, we eat a lot of fried food or drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of ice cream. The next day, do you feel good? And so if you already have a depression, it's one of those ways that I think sometimes people get a little confused that it feels like, oh, we're going to cure all depression with food. And I see it just as this really effective tool that can help people, even tonight here, right? I got to be creative for an hour. I got to chop and make some stuff and feel a sense of accomplishment. And it's delicious too and feeds my brain, as opposed to maybe a night where I don't make those good choices and I don't eat as a kind of clean and filling and delicious of a meal. The next, if I have depression tomorrow, as I'm not feeling so good, not only on a molecular level, am I probably dealing with a lot more kind of inflammation, but I'm also just dealing with that psychology that I know I haven't really taken care of myself. And so, it's when I find somebody and they're eating, we joke, we call it the 12-year-old boy diet, where it's like pizza, pasta, chicken wings, chicken fingers.
I've got a lot of those.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of hope, because there's a lot of fun to be had in the kitchen for patients who are struggling with their mental health. There's a lot of optimism I have when I go into the grocery store. It's a great way for us to flex our creativity. It's a great way for us to do something that's so hard when you have mental health concerns, which is to give to other people and to nourish other people. And so, everybody who's out there who's cooked a meal for somebody, just like you put food in front of other folks, you cook for them, it feels really good. And so these are all the ways that, there's the nutrition. It's awesome for the omega-3 fats and the B12 and the protein and the selenium and iodine and all that stuff. But there's also the way that food fits into our kind of personal food culture and how we form connections with people. And that, you know, and that's the real testament of mental health, right? Whether it's dementia or depression, like, you know, you're struggling when you don't feel as connected. And so that's where food, you know, food is throughout cultures. It's just, it's that element that connects all of us in a really wonderful way.
And you added the experience of eating and love. And so when you add all of that together, it has to be somewhat healing.
I think it's potent medicine. I mean, as I always try to remind people, I don't think it's the only thing we have to do for our mental health, but I do think it's been missing from the conversation. And so really all my work has really been about like, I think it's been about promoting that, but it's also, I think, my experience of treating people. And it doesn't feel good. You start someone on a medication or they're in a therapy and they're eating garbage. And, you know, therapy and mental health improvement is about brain change. And I like the idea that we have their brain to beat depression and anxiety. We call it brain grow mode. Your brain is in this mode of growth, of learning, of promoting new brain connections that, you know, food plays a powerful role in that. And so, you know, I hope increasingly as we get into a preventative stance with depression and dementia, we'll see more and more of this type of work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to switch. I have many more questions, but not today. It'll be for another time. Annie, I'd love to see what you're doing with your tart and hear a little about both your new book, Annie, and Drew's, and then we are going to be running out of time. So Annie, please show us that beautiful tart you're cooking.
So the thing I love about this tart is I'm not really good with pastry. I don't like to get out the rolling pin and make a big mess in the kitchen with flour. So what I do is I just make the crust in my food processor, and it's just some whole oats, some almond flour. This is actually hazelnut because they were out of almond flour at the grocery store. A date, which binds it together, maple syrup, olive oil, and salt. And I have the recipe for you on my website. We'll send you the full recipe as well as the link. You basically put all that in the food processor and pulse it until it turns into a ball, and then you dump it into the tart shell. And then you just spread it out with your hands, or I use wax paper, and you bake the tart shell. And then the fun part for me, I don't know if you know what frangipane is, but frangipane is this like really sweet, buttery French cream. So my brain healthy answer to frangipane is I make a cashew cream in my blender, which is just soaking cashews in water for a couple hours, drain off the water, put it in a blender with tahini, which is a sesame seed paste that has a lot of brain health benefits to it, including selenium and some great antioxidants. And then a little bit of maple syrup for sweetness, just a touch. And then we blend that into a cream. I pour that on the bottom, slice up some apples, bake it. And I just finished it with a tahini maple drizzle just over the top. And then I'll add a few sesame seeds just to make it look pretty. Sesame seeds are also really good for you. These are black sesame seeds. I like using a combination white and black. Sesame seeds actually have sesamol, which is a nutrient that is thought to block amyloid plaque in the brain. And amyloid, as you know, is the thing we're all worried about developing with Alzheimer's. And that's it. So you can skip the tart as well and just make the apple tahini cream. The recipe I give you has a little bit extra cream. So if you don't want to do all the fussy dessert, you can just serve this as a dessert. Spices.
What a good idea. Yum.
Tahini cream. And there's no sugar in this. There's no flour. It's all nuts and seeds and olive oil and whole foods forms of sugar like dates. So I hope you try it. And if you do, I hope you let me know.
It looks and sounds delicious.
I have to tell you, I got a sneak peek of Drew's new book, Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. And I cannot wait for you all to read it. I love everything about this book. And there's tons of great recipes like the wild salmon burgers as well. And I can't wait to cook all of the recipes. So Drew, thank you for that body of work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. You're one of the few people who's read the book, so I really appreciate your positive comments, and I also appreciate all your help. Annie read through all of the recipes as just another physician who cares about food to check them out, and it's always a treat to get to cook with you and to get to work with you.
I want to thank both of you, but I'm going to ask first this last question about the book. When will your book be published, Drew?
So Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety will be out in March. We're going to be doing a bunch of special events in the fall. We know that people, anxiety and depression doesn't really wait. And so we're going to be releasing some of the recipes early and hosting some regular kind of tips and advice segments, mostly on Instagram. So for anybody who's curious, please come on over to Drew Ramsey MD, my Instagram page. But, it's going to be a tough winter, Glenda. And so
we're going to need that.
As we head in with a pandemic and with, our need to kind of heal from all of the politics and for our continued, I think, challenge with all of the racism that's afflicting our country, it's a season for us to be really, really in tip-top shape with our brain health. And so I really appreciate anyone's support for the book, but also just want to encourage everybody to really double down on your efforts to take care of your mental health and those that you love. This is going to be a challenging winter, but it's nothing that we can't handle, especially if we prepare and we plan and we have discipline around that.
Thank you so much. Annie, do you want to tell us anything about your coming book? And is it too early to tell?
A little bit early. I'm working on a book, but I'm actually just right in the throes of the middle of it. I just handed in 5 chapters and I have 5 more to go. But it's basically a cookbook for brain health to help you fend off cognitive decline.
We'll be so excited about both these 2 new books. I want to thank both of you. You two are a great team. You are great presenters. You're great cooks. And you are truly professional in everything that you do in this wonderful mixture of food and brain health. I thank you so much for all that you do in really concentrating on this important issue, because we really have a global epidemic about neurodegenerative disease and disastrous brain health. And both of you are helping so much in concentrating on this and giving us this beautiful tool of delicious food that can actually help us to heal our brains, protect our brains, and hopefully to love one another. So thank you for both. And please, Annie, you'll be with us every time, and Drew, come again. I want to remind everyone that this session was recorded and will be available on our website, aspenbraininstitute.org. You can register for each session, or you can register for all 5 sessions. So I hope to see all of you next week in the Brain Health Kitchen, and let's get cooking. Ciao, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you.